Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The shrill shriek of the alarm shattered the peaceful darkness of John's dreams, heralding the arrival of yet another morning. He stirred, his body heavy with the reluctance to begin another unremarkable day. With a weary sigh, he silenced the relentless ringing, his fingers fumbling across the nightstand. He rose, his movements mechanical, longing for something more than the mundane routine that awaited him. Standing before the mirror, dressed in the uniform of his profession, a crisp white shirt and charcoal suit, John inspected his reflection, searching for a spark in his tired gaze. His short brown hair, usually styled with precision, was a testament to his desire for order in a life that felt increasingly chaotic. Yet, despite his meticulous appearance, he noticed an emptiness within his own eyes, an unspoken yearning for change. Mumbling a resigned phrase, "Embrace the grind," he grabbed his briefcase, a shield against the outside world, and left, confronting the daily battle between ambition and routine. His colleagues chatted around him, their voices a dull buzz in the background. Jonathan found himself zoning out, his mind wandering to places he'd never allowed it to go before. As he packed up his things to leave, his phone buzzed with a text from his sister, Emily. "Hey bro, can you house sit for me next week? I've got a business trip and need someone to water the plants and feed Mr. Whiskers." Jonathan hesitated for a moment before replying. "Sure, no problem. When do you leave?" "Saturday morning. I'll leave a key under the mat. Thanks, you're a lifesaver." He tucked his phone away, a small smile playing on his lips. Maybe a change of scenery would do him good. Saturday arrived, and Jonathan found himself standing in his sister's apartment, surrounded by her eclectic decor and the faint scent of lavender. He'd always admired Emily's sense of style, so different from his own minimalist approach. As he wandered through the rooms, watering plants and checking on the cat, his eyes were drawn to a colorful makeup bag sitting on the bathroom counter. He paused, his hand hovering over the zipper. He shouldn't. He knew that. But curiosity gnawed at him, urging him to take a peek. With trembling fingers, he unzipped the bag, revealing a treasure trove of cosmetics. Tubes of lipstick in various shades of red and pink, compacts of eyeshadow in every color of the rainbow, and sleek bottles of foundation and concealer. His heart raced as he picked up a tube of mascara, turning it over in his hands.
"What are you doing?"
he whispered to his reflection, but the question held no judgment, only wonder. Before he could talk himself out of it, Jonathan grabbed his phone and pulled up a makeup tutorial video. He watched, mesmerized, as the YouTuber demonstrated how to apply foundation, concealer, and powder. With each step, he felt a growing excitement, a sense of possibility he'd never experienced before. Taking a deep breath, he reached for the foundation, squeezing a small amount onto the back of his hand. He dipped his finger into the creamy liquid, hesitating for just a moment before bringing it to his face. The cool touch of the makeup on his skin sent a shiver down his spine. As he blended the foundation, he marveled at how it evened out his complexion, softening the angular lines of his face. Next came the concealer, brightening the areas under his eyes and around his nose. With each brush stroke and dab of his finger, Jonathan felt a transformation taking place, not just on his face, but deep within his soul. He moved on to the eyes, carefully applying a neutral eyeshadow, and then, with a slightly unsteady hand, attempting to line his eyes with a soft brown pencil. The mascara proved to be the trickiest part, and he nearly poked himself in the eye more than once. But when he finally stepped back to survey his work, his breath caught in his throat. The person staring back at him from the mirror was still recognizably Jonathan, but softer, more delicate. His brown eyes seemed larger, framed by dark lashes, and his cheekbones had a subtle glow from the blush he'd applied. His lips, tinted with a pale pink gloss, looked fuller and more inviting.
Is this me?
He whispered, touching his face gently, afraid the illusion might shatter. A warm feeling spread through his chest, a sense of rightness he'd never experienced before. For the first time in his life, Jonathan felt like he was seeing his true self reflected back at him. The sound of a car horn outside startled him back to reality. Panic set in as he realized what he'd done. Quickly, he began to scrub the makeup off his face, his heart pounding. What would Emily think if she knew? What would anyone think? But as he removed the last traces of foundation, Jonathan couldn't shake the memory of how it had felt, how right it had seemed. He knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. Over the next few days, Jonathan found himself drawn back to Emily's makeup bag time and time again. He spent hours watching tutorials, learning about color theory and different application techniques. Each evening, after finishing his work and household chores, he would lock himself in the bathroom and practice. His skills improved rapidly, and with each application, he felt more confident, more at ease in his own skin. He began to experiment with different looks, from natural and subtle to bold and dramatic. But no matter what style he tried, the feeling of joy and authenticity remained constant. As the week drew to a close, Jonathan knew he couldn't go back to his old life, pretending this part of himself didn't exist. He made a decision that would change everything. On his way home from Emily's apartment, he stopped at a nearby mall. His palms were sweaty as he entered the cosmetics store, but he forced himself to take a deep breath and approach one of the sales associates.
Excuse me,
he said, his voice barely above a whisper.
I'm looking to buy some makeup for myself. Could you help me?
The associate, a young woman with vibrant blue hair, smiled warmly.
Of course. What kind of products are you interested in?
Jonathan felt a wave of relief wash over him.
Well, I'm just starting out, so I guess I need the basics. Foundation, concealer, maybe some eyeshadow and mascara.
For the next hour, the associate guided him through the store, helping him find products that matched his skin tone and suited his needs. By the time he left, Jonathan had a bag full of carefully chosen cosmetics and a heart full of excitement. That night, he sat on his bed, surrounded by his new purchases. He opened each product reverently, breathing in the scents of powder and cream. As he began to apply the makeup, he felt a sense of coming home, of finally allowing himself to be who he truly was. But something was still missing. Jonathan stared at his reflection, admiring the soft glow of his skin and the subtle shimmer on his eyelids. His gaze drifted to his short brown hair, and he frowned. It didn't match the person he saw emerging. The next day, he found himself in a wig shop, running his fingers through long, silky strands of hair in various shades and styles. His heart skipped a beat when he came across an auburn wig with gentle waves that fell past his shoulders. He tried it on with trembling hands, and when he looked in the mirror, tears sprang to his eyes. For the first time, he saw her. Not Jonathan, but someone new. Someone who had been waiting to emerge for so long.
Sienna,
he whispered, the name coming to him unbidden.
Your name is Sienna.
The next few weeks were a whirlwind of self-discovery and experimentation. Sienna ordered clothes online, carefully selecting items that spoke to her emerging style. She practiced walking in heels in the privacy of her apartment, giggling at her wobbly first steps, but determined to master the skill. One Saturday morning, Sienna stood before her full-length mirror, heart pounding with anticipation. She'd spent hours getting ready, applying her makeup with meticulous care and styling her auburn wig to frame her face perfectly. The navy blue A-line dress she wore hugged her curves in all the right places, and the kitten heels added a touch of elegance to her outfit. "This is it," she whispered to her reflection. "This is who I am." With a deep breath, Sienna grabbed her purse and headed out the door. She'd decided to visit a cafe across town, somewhere she was unlikely to run into anyone she knew. Each step filled her with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. As she entered the cafe, Sienna felt eyes on her, but not in the way she'd feared. A young man held the door open for her with a smile, and the barista greeted her warmly. She ordered her coffee with a slightly shaky voice, but the barista didn't seem to notice anything amiss. Settling into a corner table with her latte, Sienna allowed herself to relax. She people-watched, noting how women carried themselves, the way they gestured as they spoke. She found herself mimicking some of their mannerisms, feeling more natural and comfortable with each passing moment. A group of women at a nearby table caught her attention. They were laughing and chatting animatedly, and Sienna felt a pang of longing. She'd always been somewhat of a loner, but now she yearned for female friendships, for the camaraderie she saw before her. As if sensing her gaze, one of the women looked over and smiled. "I love your dress," she called out. "That color is gorgeous on you." Sienna felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "Thank you," she replied, her voice soft but steady. "I just got it." The woman's smile widened. "Well, it's a great choice. I'm Olivia, by the way. Would you like to join us?" For a moment, Sienna hesitated. Fear and doubt crept in, whispering that she didn't belong, that they would see through her. But then she looked at Olivia's welcoming expression and the curious smiles of the other women, and she made a decision. "I'd love to," Sienna said, gathering her things and moving to their table. "I'm Sienna. It's nice to meet you all." The next hour flew by in a blur of introductions, laughter, and conversation. Sienna found herself relaxing more and more, sharing anecdotes, and joining in the friendly banter. These women didn't see her as Jonathan in a dress. They saw Sienna, and they accepted her without question. As the afternoon wore on, Sienna's phone buzzed with a text. It was from her sister, Emily. "Hey bro, just got back in town. Want to grab dinner tonight?" Sienna's heart raced as she stared at the message. She'd been so caught up in her transformation that she hadn't given much thought to how she would tell her family. But looking around at her new friends, feeling the warmth of acceptance and the joy of being her true self, she knew it was time. "Actually," she typed back, her fingers trembling slightly, "there's something important I need to talk to you about. Can you come over to my place instead?" Emily's response was immediate. "Of course. Everything okay?" Sienna took a deep breath. "It will be. See you at 7?" As she said goodbye to her new friends, exchanging numbers and promises to meet up again soon, Sienna felt a mix of anxiety and determination. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in her life, she felt ready to face whatever challenges came her way. Back at her apartment, Sienna paced nervously, smoothing down her dress and checking her makeup for the 100th time. When the doorbell rang, she jumped, her heart pounding in her chest.
You can do this,
she whispered to herself, taking a deep breath before opening the door. Emily stood on the other side, her brown eyes widening in shock as she took in the sight before her. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence stretching between them like a chasm.
Jonathan?
Emily finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Sienna stepped back, gesturing for her sister to come inside. Actually, she said, her voice trembling but determined.
It's Sienna now. Please, come in. I have a lot to explain.
Emily entered the apartment in a daze, her eyes never leaving Sienna as they made their way to the living room. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, an uncomfortable silence settling over them. I don't understand, Emily said at last, her brow furrowed in confusion. Is this some kind of joke? Sienna shook her head, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes.
No, it's not a joke. This is who I am, Emily. Who I've always been, deep down inside. I just didn't have the courage to admit it until now.
She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she was about to say. I'm transgender, Emily. I've been struggling with my identity for years, but it wasn't until recently that I finally allowed myself to explore these feelings. Emily sat back, her expression a mix of shock and concern. But how? When? You never said anything.
I didn't know how to say it,
Sienna admitted, her voice soft. I was scared of what you'd think, what everyone would think. But I can't hide anymore. Living as Jonathan, it was like wearing a mask every day of my life. Being Sienna, it feels right. It feels like me. Emily was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Then, to Sienna's surprise, she reached out and took her hand. I won't pretend I understand everything, she said slowly. But you're my sibling. I love you, no matter what. If being Sienna makes you happy, then I'm here for you. Tears spilled down Sienna's cheeks, smudging her carefully applied mascara. She squeezed Emily's hand, overwhelmed by the acceptance she'd feared she might never receive. Thank you, she whispered. You have no idea how much that means to me. They spent the next few hours talking, with Sienna explaining her journey of self-discovery and Emily asking questions, trying to understand. By the time Emily left, the sisters had hugged, cried, and even laughed together. It wasn't perfect, and Sienna knew there would be more challenges ahead, but it was a start. Over the next few months, Sienna's life underwent a dramatic transformation. She began hormone therapy, started the process of legally changing her name, and gradually came out to more people in her life. Some reactions were supportive, others less so, but Sienna faced each new challenge with a strength she never knew she possessed. At work, she nervously approached her boss to discuss her transition. To her relief, the company was supportive, implementing policies to ensure her comfort and safety in the workplace. Her colleagues, for the most part, were accepting, though there were awkward moments and the occasional insensitive comment. One day, as Sienna was preparing a financial report, her coworker Tom approached her desk. Hey, Sienna, he said, stumbling slightly over her name. Some of us are going out for drinks after work. Would you like to join us? Sienna looked up, surprised. She'd been keeping to herself lately, unsure of where she fit in with her old work friends. Really?
I'd love to, she said, a smile spreading across her face. That evening, as she sat with her colleagues at a local bar, Sienna felt a sense of normalcy she hadn't experienced in months. They chatted about work, complained about difficult clients, and laughed at inside jokes. For the first time since her transition, Sienna felt like just one of the girls, accepted and included. As the weeks turned into months, Sienna's confidence grew. She experimented with different styles, finding a balance between professional attire for work and more feminine outfits for her personal life. Her brown hair, now growing out thanks to the hormones, was styled in a cute bob that framed her face beautifully. One Saturday afternoon, Sienna decided to treat herself to a shopping trip. She'd been eyeing a particular dress in a boutique window for weeks, and she finally felt ready to try it on. As she browsed the racks, a familiar voice called out to her. "Sienna? Is that you?" She turned to see Olivia, the woman from the cafe all those months ago, approaching with a warm smile. "Olivia, it's so good to see you," Sienna said, genuinely pleased to run into her old acquaintance. "You look amazing," Olivia gushed, taking in Sienna's appearance. "How have you been? We never did manage to get together again after that day at the cafe." Sienna felt a twinge of regret. In the whirlwind of her transition, she'd let many potential friendships fall by the wayside. "I've been going through some changes," she admitted. "But I'm doing well. How about you?" They chatted for a few minutes, catching up on each other's lives. As they talked, Sienna felt the easy rapport they'd shared at the cafe returning. When Olivia invited her to a book club meeting the following week, Sienna didn't hesitate to accept. The book club turned out to be a turning point for Sienna. Surrounded by a group of intelligent, supportive women, she found the female friendships she'd been longing for. They discussed literature, shared personal stories, and offered each other advice and encouragement. For the first time in her life, Sienna felt like she truly belonged. As spring turned to summer, Sienna's life settled into a new rhythm. She'd found a balance between work and her personal life, nurturing new friendships while maintaining relationships with those who had supported her from the beginning. Her confidence grew with each passing day, and she began to see a future full of possibilities. One warm evening, as Sienna was walking home from a dinner with friends, she passed by the cafe where her journey as Sienna had truly begun. On a whim, she decided to stop in for a latte. As she waited in line, she caught sight of her reflection in the mirrored wall behind the counter. The person staring back at her was a far cry from the confused, scared individual who had first experimented with makeup in her sister's bathroom. Sienna saw a confident, radiant woman with brown hair, wearing a navy blue dress that hugged her curves. Her makeup was flawless, applied with the skill of months of practice, and her eyes sparkled with a happiness that came from within. "What can I get for you?" the barista asked, with a smile. Sienna returned the smile, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. "A vanilla latte, please," she replied, her voice strong and clear. As she took her drink and settled into a corner table, Sienna pulled out her journal. She'd started keeping it shortly after beginning her transition as a way to process her thoughts and feelings. Opening to a fresh page, she began to write. "Dear Jonathan, it's been a year since I last saw you in the mirror. A year since I gathered the courage to let Sienna emerge. I want you to know that I don't regret a single moment of our journey together. You protected me for so long, hiding the truth of who we were behind a mask of conformity. But in doing so, you also kept us from truly living. I'm grateful for the strength you gave me, for the foundations you built in our life. Without you, Sienna wouldn't exist. But now, It's time for me to live the life we always dreamed of, but were too afraid to pursue. I'm happy, Jonathan. Truly, deeply happy. I have friends who accept me for who I am, a job where I can be myself, and a family that, while still adjusting, loves me unconditionally. I'm no longer hiding, no longer pretending. Every day, I wake up excited to face the world as my authentic self. Thank you for getting us this far. Thank you for holding on until I was ready to take the reins. You'll always be a part of me, a reminder of the journey we've taken. But now, it's time for Sienna to shine. With love and gratitude, Sienna. As she finished writing, Sienna closed her journal and looked around the cafe. She saw people from all walks of life, students studying, couples on dates, friends catching up, and among them, she saw herself, not as an outsider, but as just another person living her life. Sienna gathered her things and stood up, smoothing down her dress. As she walked out of the cafe, she held her head high, a small smile playing on her lips. The future was bright, and she was ready to embrace it, one step at a time.
Thanks for watching, my girlies. Be sure to check out Patreon for more.